Alright, boys and girls, those who bounce in between, it's Comrade Dankey here again today. This is the final part of Re-Education series, How to Revolution. I've been watching it, I've been reacting to it, and this is the conclusion. So hopefully he will be vindicated by the conclusion, but let's just dive right in.
So, this is it. Nazis are marching in the streets, businesses are shutting down, people are distressed and depressed all over the place.
People are pissing and shitting all over the place. It's disgusting.
And through this entire series, I've been alluding to a solution. But what exactly is it that we've been talking about this whole time? What is it that we are actually saying? Unity, language, and visibility. That's
Alright, so let's look at these three things: unity, language, and visibility. Now, what does he mean? What do anarchists mean when they talk about unity? What do they mean when they talk about language? What do they mean when they talk about visibility? In the previous parts, when he's spoken about unity, he spoke about how we need to unite all people of the working class, left, right, and center. In previous parts, when he talked about language, he talked specifically about how to debate the alt-right and how to win over the audience. And when he talks about visibility, in previous parts, he talked about appealing to the mainstream media and trying to get the spotlight from them. So these are all very weak methods on achieving a revolution, but let's see if he tries to take these into a different realm, maybe into the realm of actual boots on the ground activism that the working class can do.
what we're talking about here.
Because for an example, when I think of building left-wing unity, I think of building a like-minded coalition with left-wingers to form a broad anti-fascist network. I don't think about reaching out to centrists and liberals and conservatives because I don't see any utility in doing that. In fact, I see great detriment in doing that. So when I talk about unity, I talk about uniting the certain revolutionary elements of the left that actually can come together, hack out their ideological differences, and actually do something constructive and get some action done. When I talk about using language to forward proletarian action, I'm talking about using the language of Marx and Lenin, using the theory that has been developed so meticulously over the past century and a half of socialist activism and experimentation. So when I talk about using the language, I talk about using the full width and breadth of socialist knowledge and Marxist-Leninist theory. When I talk about visibility, I'm not talking about trying to dilute our message and appeal to a mass audience. I'm talking about making sure that our ideology is at the forefront, that we announce that we are Marxist-Leninists, we're proud of it, and we will rock our hammers and sickles and our crimson banners, and we will show portraits of Stalin and Lenin, and we will honor them as the great revolutionaries and leaders that they were. And that being said, we will cloak ourselves in communism because that's what we are. We will embrace our theory and we will embrace our identity as revolutionary proletarians. So that's what I think about when I think about these things. I have a feeling that re-education doesn't think the same way.
Are the tools that you need to use to consolidate power. The far right wants you broken up and disjointed. Talking to people about socialist solutions builds alliances. Visibility gives you the sense of numbers, and good optics gains you more support. Numbers will give the public motivation to act, and a strong message will give them the strength for actual change.
But once again, you're sort of relying on I don't know if it's fair to say 100% of the proletariat to be on your side, but you're essentially saying you need to harness a vast majority of the proletariat, even the ones that are completely politically disenfranchised, disengaged, and disinterested from engaging in any kind of class warfare or class conscious activity of any kind.
And finally, common language forms alliances. 99% of us are struggling while 1% hoard the wealth. That is an anchor that we can pretty much latch on to any single person that we talk to. You have to understand that populist messages for the majority lean left-wing, and we need solidarity between all people, not just on the left, but on the right as well, because it's going to take all of us to be able to make real change.
That's a horrible idea, because the second that you start to reach out and try to appeal to conservatives, you have to dilute your message, dilute your goals, dilute your ambitions as proletarians, and then reach out to this sector of the proletariat that completely rejects class consciousness and buys into this reactionary petty bourgeois propaganda. So yeah, good luck running a revolution when fucking half the proletariat disagrees, and you're trying to rely on the mass consent of the proletariat to go forward with it. It's never gonna happen. The vast, I said this many times in past videos, but vast portions of the proletariat are going to be bogged down by the exploitation of capitalism, all the other horrible things that we have to deal with in this society, racism, sexism, what have you, high rent cost, healthcare cost. They can't be bothered to do a proletarian revolution. They may not want to do a proletarian revolution. They may have bought into reactionary propaganda themselves. They may be completely disinterested in the political process. That's liberalism, and that's something that we shouldn't rely on them to fucking be the backbone of our movement. And to say that we need the support of, like, I assume you mean 50% or more of the working class, is pie in the sky. Eventually the support will come, but trying to rely on that as the crux of your revolution rather than a vanguard party is completely foolish.
At this point, I'd like to give a shout out to Bo from the 5th column. He turned me on to Rule 303. Rule 303 is, if you have the might and...
Just so I'm clear, the goal is to increase class consciousness within the already left-wing sector of the proletariat and expand that class consciousness outward. It's not to reach across the aisle and try to bring conservatives in by making weird appeals that will somehow reinforce their reactionary worldview while simultaneously supporting your anarchist revolution. I don't really understand how you're supposed to do that, but that's the problem that you created when you decided to try to reach out to conservatives.
At hand, you have the responsibility to use it. Our collective knowledge is our might in this situation. We have a responsibility to tell the public.
Once again, dude, you're using the USSR national anthem, but I have you in a video saying that you don't like tankies and you don't like the USSR. So, like, why are you using the aesthetics of Soviet socialism if you don't like it? It doesn't make sense to me. I think you're just doing it to look cool, and I can't disagree. It is cool, but it just sounds weird coming from somebody who's an anarchist to be like, oh yeah, here's the USSR national anthem in the background of my video. Fucking dude, seriously.
What we know, and to get
I'm not gatekeeping, I'm just pointing out something that's obvious.
Them to help themselves. We need to be prepared, and up until now we haven't been, and this is inevitably just going to get worse. We have talked for years about every single problem that the economy, that society, that industry has, and up until now few people have offered anything in the way of a solution. Well, here's your solution. My proposal is a passive solution called the mass line. And I know a few of you out there already know where I'm going with this.
Alright, so mass line had its origins in Marxist-Leninist theory. So, I mean, we got the dude who says, like, Marxist-Leninism is bad, but at the same time, he's advocating for mass line tactics. Like, which is it, buddy?
The mass line is the primary Marxist method of revolutionary leadership of the people.
I disagree. I think it's the Vanguard Party.
And to achieve a mass line, you have to have mass perspective. Mass perspective means recognizing the masses are themselves the only force which can revolutionize society, and the masses have to...
Once again, I disagree with that. I looked in my crystal ball, and I knew that you were going to say this, so I brought up this quote from Lenin, because it's very relevant. He says, "Class political consciousness can be brought to the workers only from without, that is, only from outside the economic struggle. From outside the sphere of relations between workers and employers, the sphere from which alone it is possible to obtain this knowledge is the sphere of relationship of all classes and strata to the state and the government, the sphere of the interrelations between all classes." So, in order to understand and propel the revolution forward, you need to have a comprehension of the entire class structure, not just the struggles of the proletariat, but how they fit into the overall structure of capitalism and the class antagonisms that exist between them and the bourgeoisie. So that was a lot, but essentially, mass, what is it called? Mass action? The mass line? Shit, it's late. Mass line tactics are only useful for building trade unionism. They can't really go beyond that. Sure, it empowers the workers to a certain extent, but to lead the proletariat revolution, you sort of need the socialist intelligentsia to do that. You need a party leadership.
People. And to achieve a mass line, you have to have mass perspective. Mass perspective means recognizing the masses are themselves the only force which can revolutionize...
But before you call me some kind of a shitbird, I do acknowledge that, of course, the Communist Party, the party of the proletarian revolution, has to be in touch with the proletariat. I mean, that goes without saying. Of course they have to have the proletariat's interest in mind. I'm just saying that the revolution can't solely encompass the proletariat perspective. It has to go outside of that perspective also to understand the overarching class dynamics at play.
Society and the masses have to discover these revolutionary goals through their own struggles, while socialists like us are here to help guide them. So how do we get mass perspective? Number 1, understand who your audience is and what they want. Number 2, focus on sparking action, not just raising awareness. And number 3, achieve specific results. Talk with regular people, neighbors, co-workers, friends, family. Discover what issues they...
Why is he showing Alexandria Cortez here? Is this just sort of like a subliminal message? I mean, this guy is an anarchist, right? I mean, he supports the dissolution of the bourgeois state. So why is he showing... Oh my god. Oh my god. This just keeps getting worse and worse, friends.
They have in these troubling times. It may be economic, environmental, financial, etc. These issues may be vague or confused or disjointed, but it's our job to focus the topic onto a strong message or a line. For example, they may be angry that immigrants are flooding into the country from overseas. Now, this obviously isn't possible and very wrong, but you have to look past the propaganda. Immigrants are a scapegoat. It's a code word for a real issue. Maybe they feel like they're losing something. Maybe it's job security or personal safety or something along those lines.
Those are all positions of white privilege, and they have to understand that if we are going to become a more egalitarian society, it's going to involve removing things like white privilege and male privilege and cis privilege from our society. It's going to mean you're treated a little bit differently. Guess what? White guy, cis guy, male guy, aka me, I'm going to be treated the same as everybody else. It actually sounds pretty good. I would prefer it if people didn't treat me better or worse based on, my skin or my gender or my, whatever. I'd prefer it if we judged each other based on the words that came out of our mouth and the actions that we did.
Take the conversation away from immigrants and find a solution to the root problem. If job security is actually the issue, you could explain to them that capitalists are the ones that are encouraging migration, and they're the ones hiring them.
They don't care, dude. I'm gonna tell you what the conservatives are gonna say. I'm gonna do what you did, like in part one, and project the conservative response. The conservative response is that these dark people, these scary foreigners, these brown people are pouring in here like vermin, and they are polluting our pure white country, and they are going to destroy us because their cultures are primitive and our culture is enlightened, but somehow our culture is being like destroyed by their primitive culture. I don't know how that works, but that's the conservative mind for you. It's gonna go to a very racist road very quickly. Right? They're not interested in learning about the class struggle. They reject the class struggle. Why the fuck are you even trying to appeal to these conservative chuds and explain to them what's what? Because they reject it. They reject all of it. They love capitalism. They suck capital's dick every single day. They jerk off to Ayn Rand. It's disturbing, but it's true.
There isn't any sense in blaming somebody that has no money and no power. Or maybe they are worried about personal safety or terrorism, and you can change that to reflect that capitalists are the ones that create the conditions for those situations to happen, be it underfunding schools or not having proper drug coverage that allows for people to end up on the streets addicted to drugs.
They blame the people for those actions. They're like, oh, you're addicted to heroin, it's your own fucking fault. It's not society's fault. Pick yourself up by your bootstraps, snowflake. That's the conservative solution to those things. They don't care about the socio-economic material conditions. All that's just a bunch of PC libcuck bullshit to them.
Find an anchor that appeals to them and work off of that. Our goal is to find a socialist solution. So now that you've got it into their mind that it isn't about immigration, it's about job security. Well, a very simple socialist solution to job security is worker co-ops. Allow the work...
Oh, man. All right. I think it's pretty apt to describe worker co-ops as being like an island of socialism and an ocean of capitalism. Obviously, it's not going to work out too well for the co-op. It's going to be eaten and destroyed and spat out the other end by all the capitalist conglomerates that will quickly rush to crush any kind of real worker co-op that stands to challenge the capitalist profits.
Workers to have the vote so they don't have the chance of losing their jobs to automation, immigration, or consolidation of a fucking monopoly. Another social-ish solution would be to tax multinational corporations and big businesses properly and then take that money and invest it in local businesses.
That's not socialism, though. That's... And I don't know if you did this on purpose, but you said it was social-ish? Yeah, I guess so. If you don't know what socialism is, because under socialism, you wouldn't have any national businesses. They would all be absorbed and given to the state to run. And so, I don't know, dude. Like, socialism and social democracy are two different things. And if you're gonna equate the two, I think that's pretty intellectually dishonest of you to do that.
And if the problem is personal safety, then simply instituting something as simple as a living wage or debt elimination or universal drug coverage would allow the impoverished people who are committing crimes to get out of poverty so they wouldn't have to commit crimes. It's a simple socialist solution, something that is able to be put onto a banner and marched for.
But these are all solutions that you're advocating for from within the capitalist system. There's no solutions you've advocated for that imply the overthrow of capital and the installment of a proletarian dictatorship. Everything you've done has been reform, reform, reform. And coming from an anarchist, this is a very strange take to me. I don't know if other anarchists feel the same way. Adopting mass line tactics, which is really sort of a Marxist-Leninist, I would say a Maoist conception and development, is kind of strange to me also.
Of course, we revolutionaries should genuinely try to help the masses with their daily struggles, but that is not the main reason for our existence as revolutionaries. Our work towards satisfying the long-term needs of the masses is even more important than our work could ever be in support of their immediate and temporary interests. Remember, do not let the ends
so you kind of went against the whole concept of mass line there when you were like, yeah, we shouldn't let the immediate distractions of the working class keep us occupied from the real revolution, which is socialism. That it's weird. You'll say one thing at the beginning and then you'll go around and you'll do a 180. I don't know if you're doing this intentionally or not, but it's a very like topsy-turvy, wishy-washy kind of guide for a revolution here. It's not very consistent.
Justify the means, but never value the means at the expense of the ends. I reiterate, focus less on how we should go about things and more on what things we should go about.
I think you should focus probably on both of those. Especially the first one. You should focus on how you should go about things. How do you build this socialist revolution? How do you overthrow capitalism? These are important things that you should probably figure out how you're gonna do that. In addition to saying we need to overthrow capitalism, it's kind of, you kind of need both. You need a plan. People are gonna want a plan, and when they show up to join your revolution and they say, okay, friend, comrade, how are we going to overthrow capital? And you say, oh, I don't know, we don't focus on really how we should go about things. That's not a good idea. That's definitely not a good guide to a revolution.
If we're talking about solutions and not the process, then people will want to join us. If we're only talking about process, then people will have no interest.
The process is the key, dude. That's how the revolution actually happens. It's like watching or studying chemistry only to see the reactions instead of like learn the actual chemical reactions that happen on paper. You're just watching like the puff of smoke. You're not analyzing like what kind of things actually went down. The breakdown of molecules, the exchange of free electrons, all that shit, all that science.
Okay, so before I conclude part 1, there are 3 points that are left to be said.
Part 1?
And those go as follows. Marches, rallies, sit-ins, and protests will happen by themselves, so we need the masses to be informed before they take to the streets independently. 2, we need to be involved in any and all demonstrations as possible to gain allies and support.
I agree.
3, it is important for us to organize actions of our own.
I agree.
In the next video series, we're going to be talking about direct action advanced, sit-ins, walkouts, protests, and state violence. Thanks.
Well, that sounds like more of what I actually want to hear about. Why'd you keep me distracted with all this bullshit about trying to appeal to conservatives and shit? All that, you can just kind of toss that aside. Tell me about the nitty gritty, dude. Tell me about how to do a sit-in, a protest. Tell me about how to keep the chuds from throwing balloons filled with urine at us, because that's gonna be a problem. They're fucking goobers, man. They do all kinds of weird stuff at those protests, all kinds of weird intimidation tactics. So tell us, dude. Tell us, how do we counter these LARPing chuds who know how to form a shield wall? It's hard, but it's possible.